All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what you just saw. You got the first thing is the one I was flipping the pancake. It's actually pretty interesting. It was actually trying to learn via feedback controls. Now that is something that is in a lot of research institutes. It has to do with systems controls, a lot of feedback. I mean, I'm not sure how to explain it beyond that without getting too technical. But it was essentially feeling what it was doing. And when you saw the camera, that was actually after it had learned what it was doing, and the camera was tracking or seeing what was going on. It's kind of solidifying its knowledge. Then you have the torque vehicles. They kind of have a kind of group think. They can kind of observe what they're doing, and it's actually not that difficult to kind of understand where you're going. It's a very basic function of most animals. In fact, insects, like a cockroach, can find the way to go somewhere. But what's really interesting is you have technology like that moving forward. Google's coming up with a car that pretty much drives itself on the roads and has GPS technology connected with Google Maps, so it can find its own path. I think that's really interesting. But as it turns out, machines think better in groups than as individuals. I didn't find a video on it, but I forget which institute it was that was researching this, but they had these tiny little robots. Basically, their only function was to blink a light or kind of vibrate in a certain direction. And we had one, just a single one, it's kind of stupid, just doesn't really know what to do, just kind of vibrates. Maybe you can plan a path for it, doesn't really do anything. But if you put a bunch of these in a group, you can make them form patterns or have them all move towards a certain area, or if they're all scattered randomly, you can have them move towards a central point. They start behaving in terms of a group because they have a little wireless chip and they can communicate with each other. Or you can tell them to all start out blinking randomly, just have a random pattern. But eventually, like after, I want to say, 20 blinks or so, they're all synced. So machines actually think better in terms of groups. The last thing I want to talk about is Watson. Watson's a really interesting case because, I mean, if it's on Jeopardy, you can kind of intuitively say, oh, it's just using a search engine, it's just finding these answers. But that's not actually what's going on. This man, David Ferrucci, who was the head of Watson's IBM team, came to Northeastern recently and had a talk, and he kind of went over what was going on. And this was the anniversary of the Jeopardy game that was aired a year ago. And David Ferrucci, the way he sees it is that it's a type of linguistics problem. You have to understand things like irony or jokes or puns, and that's not something that's really intuitive to a machine. It's kind of literal. So it has to like interpret these things. It has volumes and volumes and volumes of knowledge that it's going through, and it's coming up with very different branches, hundreds of branches of likelihoods, and it comes up with the best possible answer. Like you saw in the contest right there, whenever Watson was answering first, it always had confidence levels of like say 80 or 90. When it wasn't answering, which I didn't actually show, it would have confidence levels of 40. Or sometimes it'll just come up with a really random number like 17,943. Or it'll just come up with a really odd answer to a question. So it's not perfect, but it actually learns from its own mistakes, and it learns from the other contestants as to what right answer would be. It kind of stores the knowledge of what puns can be made in this situation, what subtleties there are to language. So it's a really difficult transition to go from human language to computer language. So this is something else I want to talk about. MIT is working on self-aware computing. And I think that it's really interesting, but it's kind of, I think the first thing that comes to mind when you hear self-aware computing is just like, oh shit, Skynet. It knows. But no, self-aware computing is actually just something, I wouldn't say simple, but it's a really simple concept. A self-aware computer can kind of divide its resources into really efficient packets, whereas a programmer nowadays would have to actually tell the machine how many resources to devote to this specific program, to that specific task. But self-aware computing, it can just do that itself. It divides its own resources. So I talked about computing versus linguistics. So yeah, there's AI. No more.
Hello. This is perfect timing because my husband just came in. He's back there. He's the real scientist. He does biology at Harvard. He makes chimeras. Like, he makes dog cats and cat dogs and stuff. Yeah. He does only the most evil biology. So anyways, I was going to talk about stuff. Let me turn on my iPad and conduct consult my notes. By the way, I have like a bad cold, so I sound kind of nosy and coffee. And just thank you for being considerate. Okay. So the next slide, please. Oh look, it's a movie. Let's watch it.
Snape, whatever happens to you, make sure you leave a descendant, okay?
Are you saying you want to have my baby?
I'm saying that in the 21st century, the genes of soldiers like you are going to be in high demand.
Genes?
The inherent characteristics of any given individual are determined by his or her genes. By duplicating a set of superior